Hello everyone, and welcome to the Commexis Cast Daily, all the news you need to know from our inbox to yours. I'm Anthony McGordy, the videographer and podcaster here at Commexis, and today I am joined by the lead strategist at Commexis, Phillip Brooks.
Good morning.
So our story for today, there's been a new study by Delmondo on YouTube brand safety, and they used, I don't know how to pronounce this company, it's either Uru or URU. They use their brand safety API, which allows them to analyze videos using some nice artificial intelligence, stuff like that, to look at, natural language processing and some other things, to analyze these videos. So they analyzed 25 of the most recent videos from the 17 top influencers on YouTube using Social Blade's ranking of global YouTube channels. They excluded mainstream music artists. I went on Social Blade's rankings, and there's a lot of them, so it makes a lot of sense that they would exclude those. But some of them include some names we talked on the show with some YouTube controversies, such as PewDiePie. They include people such as Jenna Marbles, Shmosh, and some other popular YouTube influencers. So what they were looking for were a couple of red flags based on some in-depth field research they did with brands, and they were learning the types of content that the brands wish to avoid sponsoring, and those were weighted red flags according to a certain score. So those are unsafe objects and themes, such as weapons, drugs, terrorism, and celebrity scandals. Unsafe language, such as profanities, misogyny, and hate speech, paid or sponsored content, negative sentiment, and not safe for work material, such as nudity and extreme violence. And all of these began with a safety score of 1, and then if you had one of these, your score would go down depending on the weight of the category. So some of the findings, to quote the study, YouTube's most popular influencer channels still contain a lot of content that would be deemed brand unsafe. Based on their analysis of the 25 most recently uploaded videos of each channel, content on these channels is still more likely to be brand safe than brand unsafe, but only by a small margin. They found that 67% of these videos contained unsafe language, 61 contained a negative sentiment, and 16 referred or showed firearms, and about higher than 15% on one popular channel, but even by a surprising amount, a lot of them contained graphic violence, typically from video game footage. So I guess we can start off, what do we think about these before we get to some of the more engagement statistics?
Sure. I think, we've had many conversations about the risks of influencer marketing and what can happen to your company if you align with the wrong influencers or with an influencer that's off-brand or doesn't understand your brand or your buyer's journey or your target marketplace. This is absolutely why you have to do your due diligence when you're looking to get into influencer marketing, because if you start to align yourself with some of these kinds of people, and again, these are people on the top end of the spectrum, and so this is you're seeing this from the very tip top. Imagine what this looks like on the other end when people are trying to get into there and they're doing pretty much anything they can think of to break into that. So I think it's really important that you remember that these, this is a double-edged sword. You may get a lot of followers out of things, but you need to be concerned that if you do, you make sure you're not basically making a deal with the devil, and you're not going to ultimately torpedo your own rankings and your own online reputation.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. I mean, when I saw the statistic about the graphic violence, specifically video game footage, I was thinking, of course there's going to be tons of brands that don't want to be associated with that, but if you're a company whose market is people who like video games, you're probably going to go, well, that's just how some video games are.
Sure.
Right? So I think that's a great point. One thing I wanted to talk about was the 61% contained negative sentiment. My problem isn't actually with the percentage, it's with what negative sentiment is defined by. I was not able to take a look at the full study, so maybe it's in there, but I'm interested in what that means, because I've seen on YouTube before that some accounts have been demonetized in the past, or videos rather have been demonetized in the past for having titles and descriptions that were, you say you're reviewing something, they're very negative, and maybe that will get your video demonetized, for example. Whereas if you upload something that's positive, like I loved this or whatever, your video will stay that way. And I've seen people do comparisons of the same video with just different titles, for example. So I wonder what that means, because I think that's very vague, because negative sentiment could be, oh, I didn't like this thing, but it could also be, a thought or feeling that approaches some things with the unsafe language, such as misogyny or hate speech, without actually using any direct terms that could be flagged by that. So I don't know.
I mean, that's a great point, because when you think about, we don't know exactly how this algorithm works that they're using to determine these numbers. So if indeed they're just using machine learning or AI to pull, what I would imagine are probably transcripts of what the content in the video is and things like that. You mentioned Jenna Marbles, for example. She sarcastically uses, bitch and words like that. Like, if they're just doing that, a review of those types of content and looking at those keywords, and they're essentially, they could very, very well be mistaken what's considered to be ironic or sarcastic as a negative sentiment, or something that could be, essentially interpreted in such a way that it would make it look like negative sentiment. And the other thing to remember is that a lot of these high-end accounts are doing reviews of movies and television and music and things like that. So they're not going to love everything.
Yeah.
And to be fair, very few people tune into reviews to read ones that people are really like something.
That's true.
So when people tend to watch a video and stuff, they're usually like, I forget what the channel was, but there was a video game one where the guy just screamed and yelled for years. He was an Australian guy, and I can't remember what he was, but he.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and he was, and he was extremely popular for a number of years, and and different types of things have kind of tried to emulate that, and I think that's again, you're providing a service, you're reviewing this thing, but even if you like it, it's going to come across negative based on, if you listen to the terminology used and the voice and the tone. So
I think that's a great point. I mean, you mentioned Jenna Marbles, and on the top 17, she came in the the lower 5. So she's the fifth lowest at 52% on their score. And I wonder how much that, sarcastic voice plays a part in it. But I don't know. One thing that I definitely also wanted to talk about in terms of engagement and views on videos, the study found that videos from creators with a brand safety score greater than 0.7, so they typically did not have a lot of things weighted against them, had 38% higher average views per video and 73% higher average engagements per video. And videos from creator with brand safety scores less than 0.7 had 26% fewer average views per video and 51% fewer average engagements per video, which surprised me, if only because when I think of YouTube comments, I do not think of them as typically positive things. Typically they are not, though I guess that depends on how you curate your community in that regard. But I mean, I guess the study just goes to show that, if you're theoretically having, some better things, you're going to be getting more engagement. I don't know. Depends on the context of the video.
Yeah, I think, the one thing about, this positive content is that it tends to have a broader appeal. Yeah. But I would imagine that if you were to also look at the flip side of this and find that the most engaged of your particular audience, I bet you it would be flipped. I bet you if you were somebody that really, really likes PewDiePie, for example, you're probably happier with the videos where he's yelling and screaming at somebody on camera because he's sniping somebody or something. So I think it's an interesting kind of way to catch it if you look at it from that perspective, because again, they're going there for a particular type of content, and that's the type of content that these channels tend to deliver already. So it's kind of a reinforcing cycle.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Well, I think we can kind of just bookend this with if you're thinking of doing influencer marketing, especially on YouTube, if you're thinking of having a video sponsored or something by one of these influencers, or any influencer for that matter, it really is important for you to make sure that their views and yours align, at least for the most part, and that your audiences are aligning. That way you're not accidentally making a mistake that could cost your brand or your company.
Do more than a cursory Twitter examination. Make sure you really look at what this person's posted online in the past. Make sure that you've looked at everything that a potential one of your customers could potentially look at about these people, because again, what you don't know can hurt you, and I think that it's important to remember that, because these things, they're a high risk, high reward kind of thing. When they do work, they work great. When they don't work, they can go very, very badly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in to today's episode of the Commexis Cast Daily. Check us out tomorrow for more of the latest trending news. Have a great day.